Kimberly Gutierrez is suing her mother, Rhonda George, for false allegations, debit card charges, and personal belongings.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Case 2131, Gutierrez versus George.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss Gutierrez, this is your mother.
Yes, ma'am.
And who is this?
My grandmother.
And that's your daughter?
Yes.
I'm reading the complaint and the answer, and this is what your complaint is about. You claim that your mother had you falsely arrested, as a result of which you spent 4 months in jail. While you were in jail, it is your claim that your mother used a debit card of yours, I think $3,000 worth, and you had some belongings at her house that you want. I gather that you've had some problems in your own life. You have at least 3 children.
Yes.
Was the state ever involved in placing the children in foster care?
No.
And what about your daughter?
My daughter, yes.
And how old is your daughter?
She's 19 months.
At what point did the state become involved with your daughter?
In May of this year, May 18th of this year, when there was false allegations made against, when my mom refused to give me my daughter back.
In May, when you brought your daughter to your mother's house, when?
I called my brother on May 17th of 2022, and I asked him to babysit my daughter.
Your brother. And does your brother live with your mother?
Yes, he was staying with her at that time.
So on the 17th, you asked your brother, who was staying with your mother, if he would babysit for your daughter. Where were you going?
I was needing to go to Fresno, and I had just received my income tax check. So I needed to go to Fresno, and I was on foot because my car was impounded the day prior.
Were you going alone?
To Fresno, yes.
So you brought your daughter on the 17th of May to your mother's house, and your brother was supposed to watch him, according to you, while you went to Fresno.
Yeah, he met me down the street, actually, because there's a restraining order. So I didn't actually go to the resident.
Who has a restraining order?
My mother has a restraining order on me.
Is the restraining order that she has against you a final order or a temporary order?
It's good for 3 years, that's all I know.
That's a final order. Was that a final order of protection after a trial, or did you consent to it?
I was not notified of the court date. Didn't consent to anything.
Okay, so it was a default.
I don't know what that means.
It means you didn't show up and they entered a final order of protection in favor of your mother. So you're not permitted to go to her home.
Right.
Since that's not really the subject of this, I don't have to get into it. In any event, you went on the 17th, you dropped your child off at your mother's house, your brother was there, and then what happened?
I finally got to Fresno, I got a ride, I got to the check cashing place. It literally took me...
Don't tell me, I'm not interested in that. 17th, you dropped the child off. You were supposed to pick the child up when?
That evening.
On the 17th?
Yes.
And did you?
I showed up it was a little before 10. I showed up, I called my brother, I said, I'm down the street. He was like, yeah, I'll be right there.
10 o'clock at night?
It was almost, ma'am, I was on foot. And
No, just a second. I asked you 10 o'clock at night.
it was right before 10, yes.
Okay.
When I got there, I called him. It had been about 15 minutes had gone by, and I called him back, and I said, where are you at? And he said, Mom won't let me leave with the baby. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, Mom won't let me leave with the baby. My mother instinct kicked in, and I went in like fight or flight, and I walked down to my mom's house, and I knocked on the door and was asking for my daughter. I finally came to my...
Okay. So when your brother said that to you, instead of going to the police, you violated the order of protection.
I ended up leaving and calling the sheriff.
Okay, but you didn't. You went...
Of course, yes. I was going for my daughter. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what happened at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30?
Yes. I finally realized that about 5 minutes of being at the house, I was like, okay, you need to leave. So I left because she wouldn't open the door to give me my daughter. I left. I called the sheriff. And so I told them the situation. So they had walked down to my mother's and let her know that what she was doing was basically...
No, not what she was doing. The police came
and told her
with
that they
you.
could arrest her. And told her that if she did not, that she needed to get my daughter back. But because it was late, the baby was already asleep. And so the cops that came back down to me, and they said, look, we don't, because they knew me.
Whatever. I'm allowing you to give me a certain amount of hearsay so that I can make this story make sense.
Oh, okay.
Do you understand? But don't tell me because they knew you, what they thought.
Yes, ma'am.
You were told to come back in the morning.
Yeah, the agreement was that between my mom and the sheriff was that I could pick up Malia in the morning. The sheriff told me to call before 6 o'clock in the morning before he got off his shift, and that he would come back out and do another standby. The next morning came. Between me and my grandma, I had to call my mom. And
No, just a second. What does that mean between you and your grandma? Your agreement was you were supposed to call the sheriff. The sheriff, according to you, before 6.
I called my grandma,
No, not the grandma. The agreement was you weren't supposed to call your grandma. You were supposed to call
Right,
the
but I needed a
sheriff.
ride. I needed a ride. So I called my grandma to have her come pick me up.
Just a second. Where were you?
I was staying at a friend's house. I didn't live in Selma.
Just a second. You were staying at what friend's house?
The sheriff came, got behind us, and tried to like pin us in, and my grandma went to take off.
So your grandmother was driving.
Yes, ma'am.
And she was trying to evade the police to go someplace else.
Kimberly Gutierrez claims her mother, Rhonda George, owes for debit card charges and personal belongings.
You were staying at what friend's house?
My friend Isaiah.
Isaiah.
Yes, I stayed the night there waiting for my daughter.
Just a second. Isaiah. Isaiah what?
Bonilla.
And what is your relationship with
He's my
him?
best friend. He's been my best friend since high school.
Where are you living now?
I live with my grandmother right now since I was released.
Full time?
Right now, yes.
What do you mean right now, yes?
I'm in the process of getting my own place.
Okay, so you called your grandmother and then,
Called the sheriff,
waited
for the sheriff to respond.
and then?
The sheriff did not respond for a few hours.
Okay, so you were waiting for the sheriff to respond. The sheriff did not respond until when?
It was after 7 o'clock in the morning, and it wasn't even yes, ma'am, 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Your daughter is, according to you, 19 months old? 19 months old. And she had prior to that been living with you?
She was living with me all the time, yes.
She was living with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now let's get back to this arrest that you had. According to your papers, your daughter was with you up until that time. What time did she wake up in the morning?
Usually she wakes up between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, well, then could you tell me why, if she wakes up between 7:30 and 8, why you would even contemplate picking her up before 8 o'clock in the morning?
Because one of my issues was with certain officers that would have been responding, and the officer that responded the night of the incident, he told me if you wanted me to be the officer to respond, you need to call me before I get off my shift.
Fine, but he didn't respond to you. But according to you,
no.
he didn't respond to you.
No, it was
so
a different
then my
officer.
question to you
They
is,
did respond at 7 o'clock in the morning.
and did what?
It was a horrible mess.
Well, he did what?
They responded. When they responded, he showed up. The officer told me that he did not want to be there. He said, if I have my way, you'll never see your daughter again. And I looked at him, and I said, wow, okay.
What do you mean you looked at him? Where were you when you looked at him?
I was right next to him, but I just...
Where, at the precinct or at your house?
No, down the street from my mom's.
Okay, so he responded to you when you were down the street at your mother's house, and he said, I'm not getting involved in this, and if I had my way, you would never have your daughter. And so what did you do?
So at that point, my grandma pulled up, and I told him, I said, your assistance is no longer needed, and that my grandma could just get my daughter. And he says, well, you already called me. The deputy did. So I said, okay, whatever. He asked me if I had somewhere to live, and I said yes, and whatever. And so he went down to my mom's. When he went down to my mom's, he was supposed to just go down there and get my daughter. When he was taking too long, I could walk so far this way, and I could see straight down my mom's street. So I did. When I did, I seen that my mom was out there just giving him an earful. I know this woman very well, okay? So I just imagined what was being said about me. Well, I guess the back door is screwed and nailed shut at the house. I don't know why.
I don't know. It's not important.
Yeah. So anyways, my best friend went over the back fence.
What do you mean your best friend?
Isaiah Bonilla.
Oh, so you brought Isaiah with you?
He went...
Just a second. So you have your grandmother, and then you've got Isaiah, your best friend, also to go to your mother's house.
Yes, ma'am. He got my daughter.
Isaiah brought her to where you were.
Yes.
And then what happened?
I started walking back towards Isaiah's house. When I started walking back towards Isaiah's house, my grandma pulled up in her car, and she was like, are you ready to go get your car out of the impound lot? And I said, yeah, I'm ready. And so I got in her back seat with my daughter. When I got in the back seat, I got in the middle. Well, then she was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Your mom's over there saying a whole bunch of stuff to the deputies, so I don't know what's going to happen. And so I was like, well, I got to go get my stuff from Isaiah's. So I go to jump back out the car. As I go to jump back out the car...
Wait, just a second. Now you have your daughter.
Because I needed my wallet. My bag was at Isaiah's. My purse and everything was at Isaiah's. I was going to go back and pick it up. Well, right when we were going to go back, the sheriff came, got behind us, and tried to, pin us in, and my grandma went to take off.
So your grandmother was driving,
Yes, ma'am.
And she was trying to evade the police to go someplace else.
Yes, ma'am.
And how many police cars were involved?
When?
Were there ever any more than one police car?
Once we got to the police department, of course, there's a police department.
No, I'm talking about the number of police cars. So there's a police car
Oh,
now.
like coming behind us? No. It was just one.
It was just one.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were accelerating
No.
to get there? Was the police car siren on?
No.
Well, how did you know that he was trying to pull you over?
Because he tried to hit her car.
Oh, that would give you a clue. So you're telling me he tried to hit your grandmother's car without notifying you in any way to pull over?
Yes, ma'am. That's why I spent 4 months in
Just
jail, and I beat my case. I went to trial and beat my case. Everything was dismissed.
I'm not responsible for the criminal justice system. I'm only responsible for what goes on here.
Yes, ma'am.
So I assume once you got to the police station, both you and your grandmother were arrested.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was in May.
Yes, ma'am.
And now uncross your arms. And now we're in December
Yes, ma'am.
of the same year.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're out of jail.
Yes, ma'am.
And you've been out of jail for about...
Since August 25th.
Who does your daughter live with?
Right now, she's with the mentor. She's my ex-husband's aunt, ma'am.
And who placed her with your ex-husband's aunt?
I did.
Not the court.
No, I requested her.
Does the child's great aunt have guardianship?
No,
Custody?
I'm getting my daughter back, ma'am.
But for the last 3 months, she's been with this aunt.
Right, because Child Protective Services did get involved, and Child Protective Services, I've been doing everything that...
That's what I asked you. I asked you whether Child Protective Services
Child
were
Protective
involved.
Services did get involved with my daughter, yes.
Did. That's what I assumed.
And I've been drug testing, I've been
Just
doing...
a second.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I assumed, that Child Protective Services was involved. And so if Child Protective Services are involved, then they are overseeing the child's placement with the aunt. You have an ongoing case.
Yes, ma'am.
Probate court.
No, not probate.
Which one? Family court?
Family court, yes.
When was the case opened with regard to your daughter in the family
May
court?
18th, the day I got arrested, ma'am.
And that child became involved with the foster care system in May. Okay, so your grandmother also spent a little time in jail. How much?
2 weeks.
I quite frankly don't understand your case.
While I was in jail, Your Honor, while I was incarcerated, my mom had all my debit cards, my ID. She had went and actually, because of me getting arrested, she had went to Isaiah's and picked up all of my stuff.
You mean,
So-
just a second. Let me understand this. It is your claim that the reason that you had to go to Isaiah's house was to get your pocketbook, your wallet, your credit
never
card that
made
you
it
left
there.
that you left there.
But I never made it there.
I understand that. And Isaiah, clearly, from what you tell me, knew of the problem because he was part of this little conspiracy to get your daughter out of the house and was at the back of the house to pick up your daughter who was being put over the fence. So why would Isaiah give your mother...
Because she went over there with a baseball bat and busted out his windows. On February 4th this year, I lost my twins, okay? And that was the first time I had contacted my mother because I was going through it and I messaged her and I told her, I said, I really need my mom right now. If anything, I need my mom right now.
Kimberly Gutierrez is accusing her mother, Rhonda George, of wrongfully using her debit card and keeping her belongings.
So why would Isaiah give your mother...
Because she went over there with a baseball bat and busted out his windows. And the reason why all of my things were at my mother's was because I hadn't lived at my mom's for over a year.
What your case is about...
Is my belongings.
You claim that your mother went over and got your wallet from Isaiah's because I asked you what you were doing here. I certainly am not looking into the allegations of false arrest. It sounds as if you did the absolute wrong thing in trying to regain your daughter, whose custody, actually, you lost at a dispositional hearing and was determined to be a dependent child and placed in foster care. That's what happened here.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not even addressing your claims of false arrest.
Okay,
what you
so
did
then-
was actually the wrong thing. I said, so what are you suing for? Now,
My
you said
my
you're...
belongings,
Okay,
my
what,
money.
Just a second. What money?
She used my CalFresh, which is my EBT food stamps, and my CalWorks, which is my cash aid through the welfare department.
Just a second. So you're suing her for taking your food stamps and your welfare check.
Right.
Just a second. Your food stamps and your welfare check.
And this is the statement from my tax return of all the money that was on there.
On where?
On my debit card. It had over $3,000 on it, and I marked what was used after she had picked it up. And then these are receipts from some of my belongings that was at her house.
Just a second. You haven't lived in your mother's house?
I moved back to my mother's in the
Just
beginning.
a second.
Yes, ma'am.
You hadn't lived in your mother's house. According to what you said to me, Whitney, was it a year ago? Didn't you say that you moved out of
My
your
mom
mother?
allowed me to come back.
Because there was an order of protection.
She had called me. I was living in Fresno, ma'am.
Just a second. You hadn't lived in your mother's house. You said you were living with your grandmother. For how long were you living with your grandmother before May?
I said I was living with my grandmother right now. I was living in Fresno, ma'am.
I want to know what property you think...
My clothing, my husband's clothing, my daughter's bassinet. I had jewelry there. I had all of my clothing.
Why would all of your clothing be there? You were living with your grandmother.
I hadn't moved into my grandmother's until I got out of jail. I was living in Fresno. And my mom...
Just a second.
You're not letting me talk.
I'm not understanding your movements.
Okay, my mom kicked me out in 2021, okay? My daughter was just a few weeks old. My mom kicked me out due to her boyfriend.
She kicked you out.
Yes.
And?
When she kicked me out, I went through Marjorie Mason, and Marjorie Mason had placed me in hotels. I was placed in hotels for about 3 or 4 months, okay? And then it was about January of 21. I was pregnant with twins. They had genetic defects. On February 4th this year, I lost my twins, okay? And that was the first time I had contacted my mother because I was going through it, and I messaged her and I told her, I said, I really need my mom right now. If anything, I need my mom right now. My daughter, she had not seen my daughter. She was not a part of my daughter's life. I did not speak to my mother, nothing. So she made an agreement that she would watch my daughter, because I had to go to San Francisco because I was too far along in my pregnancy, and it was just a big old mess.
Do you have any of your daughter's property?
No.
Okay, now, let's talk about this card. Did you pick up her property from Isaiah? That's either a yes or a no, after the 18th of May.
Well, how do I answer that when I did pick up her property, but her cards were not in there? Her driver's license wasn't in there. Her food stamp card wasn't in there.
What were you doing at Isaiah's?
So she asked...
Was this when she was in jail?
Yes, right after she got arrested. So I went down there. No problem, he handed it right to me. Look in my wallet, make sure everything's in there. Like I said, I don't know if it was her driver's license or ID was missing, her food stamp card, and the other card, the bank card. I don't know how to get proof, but her best friend, he cashed out everybody money. There was a bunch of people,
I have
even himself.
The information right here.
Even himself and his girlfriend. I don't want to get into the whole...
I don't want to get into it either. It's far too complicated for me. Is what you're telling me that you never used a card that she had?
No, I did not.
Because I'm not concerned about food stamps or welfare.
I did not.
You're suing the wrong person. You were in jail, so you didn't need money from welfare. What proof do you have that
I have my bank statements.
What proof do you have that your mother withdrew money?
She was the one that went and picked up my cards.
Oh, I don't know that. That's not what she says, and you have no proof. Isaiah's not here, correct?
No.
I don't doubt you when you say that somebody used your card. I just need proof
My
to
mother,
show.
I know that she was supposed to get my daughter from CPS. She was supposed to go get a crib with my card, and I have and my grandma can.
I just want you to show me.
Yes, ma'am.
No. That your mother. I believe that people used your card.
She used my card.
No, I don't know that. I need you to show me proof that your mother
How am I
used
supposed to show? I have my bank statements.
Well, then I'll take a look at your bank statement. If your bank statement tells me who used your card, then that's an easy. She said she did not. I just want you to show me proof that any of these were used. I mean, we have a lot of PlayStations, DoorDash, Amazon Marketplace.
And
all
I was
of those.
locked up throughout that whole time.
I understand that. I suggest that you concentrate on getting yourself together. If you want to reunite your family, I suggest that you put your priorities in order.
Oh, they are in order.
Evidently not.
I work, I have a job, I go to school, I'm getting my own place, but I'm going to court. I'm getting my kids back.
Good.
Can I give you this?
I don't know what it is.
Well, I just want you to look at it.
You're telling me this is part of your daughter's criminal history? What is this?
No, I'm just showing you she just got out of jail just a couple of days ago.
They haven't picked up charges, Your Honor.
You were arrested on November 28th?
Yes.
I'm not going to let you tell me about this. You have a lawyer?
Yes.
As I said, Ms. Gutierrez, if you're trying to work to get your family back together,
Yes, ma'am.
and your kids back together,
Yes, ma'am.
it would be a good idea to think about having more children until you get these children back under your roof. We're done here. Your case is dismissed.
You have a good day.
This court is adjourned.
Oh, I love her decision. I don't want to have nothing to do with any of them. They've burned their bridges.
Perfect example of suffer the little children. So you have 3 kids, none of whom live with you. They go back and forth between a grandmother who would participate in evading the police, but where the police had to stop them by ramming the car.
Yeah, I was going to say there was something in the papers about a crash and.
She said he tried to ram my mother's car. So fingers crossed for her.
Yeah, and the kids.
But take care of
Nanette Highland is suing her former neighbor, Sahara Carrillo, for vet bills after a dog attack.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Hello, Judge. Case number 2042, Highland versus Carrillo.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tell me your dog's name.
Faith,
How old is Faith?
11,
How long have you had her, Miss Highland?
since she was 5 weeks old.
When did you live next door to the defendant?
Yeah, it was across the way, but
It's across.
yeah, my side of the door faced her side of the door, and there was a grassy knoll in between.
Do you have a photograph of the area?
No, I don't.
Do you? I'd like to see it.
That's mine, and this is where hers would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is whose trailer?
Hers.
This Carrillo. Is there a street in between this area?
That's where hers would be, right
Where?
there, in that area where the rocky thing, right after the grass.
Kevin, give this to the defendant.
Maybe
and have
this
her
one's
put
better.
Where the plaintiff's trailer would be
Okay.
and where hers was.
This is where hers would have been, right here.
Just put plaintiff and show me where yours was.
Mine is right here.
Put it down. Let me see if that makes it clear to me, Kevin. Thank you. Yours is here, plaintiff's is here, and this large grass area is a common area?
Yeah.
It's a common area because you're all the way down here. This
Right.
is a relatively large space.
It's only like.
I wasn't
Okay.
talking to you.
Sorry.
Okay. And the incident that involved your pet, Miss Highland, happened on October 8th, 2021.
Yeah, it was actually October 9th after going back through the paperwork.
You are no longer in this trailer park,
No, it's an RV park, but yeah.
an RV park. How long were you there?
4 or 5 months. It was like mid to end of May, and this happened in October, and within 3 weeks, I
You
got
left.
a place.
And that's your dog. That's
Yeah.
the dog that was injured that day.
Yes.
And what kind of a dog do you have?
A Visla mix boxer.
A Vizsla.
Visla. Uh-huh.
So tell me what happened, Miss Highland, on October 9th.
I had gotten up, and I was taking my girls out to go potty.
How many of those do you have?
2. I have a puppy that's almost 2 years old, and then Faith. So I was taking my girls out to go potty, and I'd been looking to make sure that the dog was inside, and I didn't see the dog, and it was on its chain under her trailer, apparently, because when we came outside,
Was your dog on a chain?
On a leash, yeah.
Well, what kind of leash?
that's not right.
Yes.
That's not true.
Well, that's a leash.
Right.
That's a leash.
was
He says
on-
the dog was on a chain.
No.
Do you have?
Yes, it was.
I don't have a chain.
Shh.
Okay.
I don't have a chain. Never had a chain. It's been a leash.
Okay. Were you outside on October 9th at the time of this incident? Were you outside when it started?
Yes. I was outside on top of my stairs.
No, you weren't.
Okay. You're not allowed to answer her. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Okay, so you're taking your dogs out to potty. Were they on a leash or off leash?
They were on a leash.
But she didn't have
They
them.
go outside.
Don't speak.
Okay.
I always have them on a leash whenever they go outside.
Were they on a leash on October 9th?
Yes.
Okay, so you were taking them out, although you did say, Ms. Highland, that you let them out in your front yard, is what you said, I believe, in your complaint. Let me see. You didn't say I took. You said I let my dogs out in the front yard to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Well,
when I say let them out, let me clarify, okay? I'm always with my dogs.
I know that you say you were always with them.
Yeah.
That's not my question. My question to you was a simple one. Were they on leash or off leash?
Yeah.
Yes, what?
They were on their leashes. Mm-hmm.
Be careful. You took them out on leashes in the front grass. Mm-hmm. And what happened?
When we got down to the bottom of the steps, her dog came out from underneath the trailer and grabbed Faith.
Well, she was on a leash.
Yeah, but she grabbed her. The puppy started to go one way, and I had Faith and dropped her leash, and the puppy was going, like she got out of my hand and was taken off, and her dog was under the trailer, didn't know it because I'd been watching to make sure she had been inside, but didn't see her or the dog out, and she came out of the trailer after the dog grabbed Faith.
In what location did her dog grab Faith?
Right by my trailer, right by my steps, where I had my steps. The chain was long enough for the dog to go past the tree that was right there in between the two properties. And she came out and
Your dogs
started
came right
beating-
up to my
just
dog.
just a
You didn't have a hold of the leash.
You're not.
That's
you're not-
because the
listen to
dog
me, you're
broke
not
free.
Sorry.
You want to continue with this case or you want to go?
No, I want to continue.
Then let's understand, we don't talk to each other. Okay, so your version of the events is that her dog was chained under her trailer. You came out with your dogs on leash. The puppy ran away. You dropped her leash. Her dog got your dog and took your dog back to her trailer.
Yeah.
At what point did she come out of the trailer?
After the second time, her dog had picked up Faith, and Faith was screaming, and I was screaming.
Okay. Miss Carrillo, have you ever had an incident with your dog before?
No,
With another dog?
No, I haven't.
That's a lie, because you...
Shh. I want you to think carefully. Have you ever had another incident with your dog and another dog?
No.
How long have you had your dog?
Since she was a puppy, 9 years, since 2013.
And this is the first time she aggressively bit another animal?
Yes.
Okay. You have information to the contrary, Miss Highland?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
I'd like you to tell me.
Okay. When I first moved in, she even told me about how her dog had killed a couple other dogs.
Okay. Tell me about that.
She just told me to make sure I was careful with my dogs because her dog has a history of attacking and aggression towards other dogs.
Well, those are conclusions. You first said
Yeah,
that
she
her dog
told-
killed two dogs.
She
and then-
did. She told me that her dog was aggressive and that it has a history of killing other dogs and that it had already killed other dogs, and that's why she got kicked out of her last RV park.
I've never lived at another RV park.
That's
That's
not-
my first RV park ever living at.
Where did you live before?
At my mom's on Ming Avenue.
Did you ever indicate to Miss Highland that she should keep her dogs close to her?
We've never spoken prior to the incident. We never, just maybe a hi. She just had moved in. I never spoke to her.
You want to tell me your version of what happened on the 9th of October?
Yes. I was outside on top of my stairs. I was sweeping. My dog was at the bottom of the stairs. I have her tied up to the stairs. There's a ring where I clip her leash to, so she can't go far. It's just this distance while I was sweeping.
Would you hand that to me, please?
And I can hear her dogs barking while they were inside.
Would you open it up for me? Okay. What you're telling me is that this is what you tied on to under the stairs. Where did you tie it?
This part right here. And then
Where?
I have
Where?
It, I have to show you how I have it put it on. Can you give it
Yeah,
back?
let her show me.
I'll clip it onto her harness, and then this would clip
What
onto
harness?
the bottom. My dog's harness.
Are you telling me that your dog was on a 2-foot lead?
Yes, I have her right there when I'm right there. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My neighbor can vouch to that. Yeah.
So you did see part of this incident?
Correct.
Careful. You saw it from your trailer, from your RV?
Sitting outside my trailer, in front of my trailer.
So I want you to tell me exactly what you saw.
Nanette Highland claims her former neighbor, Sahara Carrillo, owes for vet bills after Sahara's dog attacked her chihuahua.
Tell me your name.
My name is Garrett Newhouse.
Mr. Newhouse, how long have you been the defendant's neighbor?
2, 3 years.
Did you see the dog on that gizmo?
Yes.
How far do you live from the defendant?
Directly behind Sarah. I'm just right behind her.
Behind hers. So you face the back or the front of her trailer?
The front of my trailer faces the back of her trailer. The door is the same direction towards the yard.
So that you don't see her front door?
Her trailer is angled so that I can see her front door.
Okay. You want to tell me your version of what happened on the 9th? You can sit down.
I was outside on top of my stairs. My dog was at the bottom. On the bottom,
this thing?
On the
Okay.
bottom, I have a hook that I clip her leash to, and she was sunbathing right there. I moved her other places, but while I was there, sweeping on top, she was right there. So then I hear her dogs inside that were barking, and then all of a sudden I hear the door open, and the dogs just come rushing. Both of her dogs, they had leashes on, but she wasn't holding the leashes. And then my dog grabbed her dog, and I yelled at my dog and whacked her in her head, and she dropped the dog, and then that's when she was on her way.
How did that happen?
What do you mean?
Your dog is on a 2-foot lead. You heard her dogs coming out. You were on top of the stairs.
Yes.
You saw her dogs, according to you, running, and your dog is on this much.
This
much?
Yes.
No, actually not that much, because you made a loop.
Yeah, that's the way I do it.
Well, not a moment ago. You made it. You made a loop, so it was on about this much, and on about this much lead, your dog picked up her dog in the mouth. How many times?
Just that one time, and it's this long. You can see where the area is all dirt, where she stays on it and runs around it or misses in the dirt. The grass is still right there where it's nice and green, and the area that she sits in is right there, right in front of my stairs.
And so your dog grabbed her dog in the mouth while close to your trailer.
At my trailer, yeah.
At your trailer. And then you hit it on the rear end and she spit out the dog.
Yes.
And then?
And then she ran towards her and she came towards her dog.
This little dog ran towards the plaintiff. The plaintiff ran towards her. And what did you do?
She went to get her dog and I
What
grabbed
did you
my
do?
dog.
How did you grab your dog?
I took her off her leash and put her inside. And then I went to see if her dog, is your dog okay? You should have had a hold of her leash.
Now, what did you say to her when you came out?
Is your dog okay?
Okay. Is your dog okay? And what did she say to you?
I can't remember. She was just, your dog, got my dog. I'm like, how come you didn't have the leash? They were on leashes, but she wasn't holding them. And she said because of her legs that she couldn't. And I told her, then you shouldn't have dogs if you can't take care of them.
Just a second, is that what you said to her? You shouldn't have dogs if you can't take care of them?
If you can't they can't be loose. There's a leash law, and she didn't have the leash. She had leashes on them, but she didn't have a hold of them.
I'm just asking you.
Yeah.
That's what you want me to believe you said to her.
That's what I said to her, yeah.
You shouldn't have dogs if you can't take care of them.
That's what I said, yes.
Okay. And did you see her dog injured in any way?
No.
Can I see the records from the vet, please?
Yeah. And here's even photos.
And was there a report made to either the
There was,
RV?
but
Shh! I didn't finish my question. Was there a report made to the RV park
Yes.
or to the police department?
Yes.
May I see that too as well?
I don't have the RV park or the police report. They
Okay.
could not.
Okay, but not
they
they
were
could
sending
not.
me all over.
The
but-
answer is I don't have them.
Yeah, but that's just photos from the injuries.
Now, I'd like to see the vet report, please.
This is the neurology. This is all the other vet stuff.
Don't give me a whole bunch of stuff. I'd like to see the reports and the bills from the vet. And I am correct, sir, you did not see any of this incident. Is that correct?
Only the commotion
No, just a
when
second.
and she
I'm
smacked
asking
the
you.
dog and
No. Stand up. Let's be very careful about your answer. Am I correct that you didn't see any of this incident?
only after she had smacked the dog and he dropped the dog, and that little commotion right there where she picked up the dog and went in the house.
You saw it from your trailer, from your RV?
Sitting outside my trailer.
So I want you to tell me exactly what you saw. Now look at me.
Her.
Who's her?
Sarah. Her picking up her dog and going back to her house.
Where was she when she picked up her dog? No, I tell you what you're going to do. You're going to show me right here.
Like halfway between her house and my house. I mean, her house.
Put a mark where you saw her, where she picked up her dog. Okay, may I have that, please?
Struck it somewhere. Like a couple feet away.
So she picked up her dog right near Miss Carrillo's RV.
Correct, yes.
And where was Miss Carrillo?
She took the dog and let it up the stairs, put it in the house, shut the door, and came back out to see.
And at that time, were you listening to what the two women were saying to each other?
Not really.
Were they yelling at each other, or were they calm?
There was yelling.
So if they were yelling, could you hear what the yelling was?
I didn't know either one of them at that time really that well. I think I went back in the house at that point. Just whatever.
Thank you. You've been most helpful. Okay, you have the report for me from the 9th of October?
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. Okay, so there was one set of stitches that the dog had.
That was her first surgery.
Okay, let me see the second time she was there.
This is the stuff for that one. And that's why.
Well, this was the day afterwards, and when did she go
Right.
back?
It was June 30th because she was having grandma seizures, and they had to keep her because they had to start her on phenobarbital because of the eye injuries and the head injuries.
Well, it doesn't really talk about those
That's
injuries.
in the pictures. It shows where her head was punctured.
I see one wound, and I don't see a photograph.
On the picture itself, if you see her head, there's a mark right here on her head by her eye. That was a puncture wound that they had to clean out.
Okay, now, the defendant says both dogs had a leash on, but that the leashes weren't attached to your hand. Is that correct?
Honestly, I don't remember because most of the time when I'm coming down the steps, I have their leash in hand, and sometimes, like going down the steps, I lose the leash or I drop it and they are at the bottom of the steps waiting for me because they know it takes me a minute to get down the steps.
Okay. If you're standing on your steps sweeping, you see her dogs running across, then you jump down from the step and you grab your dog.
Didn't she say that she wasn't sure if she was holding the leash? Her
Absolutely.
Dog came
I
to my dog.
don't answer your questions.
Nanette Highland says her former neighbor, Sahara Carrillo, is responsible for her Chihuahua's vet bills. Sahara claims her dog was tied up and Nanette's dog ran onto her property.
At any time did Faith run across the lawn?
No, she was right by the steps because the tree is right there. It was like in between our spaces isn't even as big as this, in between here and your front of the bench. And literally, she was grabbed right by my steps.
Was any report made by you to any animal control?
I'd called 911 and reported it, and they can't find the report, but it was done over the phone, and I waited for him to come out for a week, and I kept calling them. But I did it over the phone with them.
Did you ascertain from the defendant whether her dog was up to date in rabies shots?
I didn't ask any questions afterwards. I was just trying to make sure and find out what was going on with her.
Did anyone from the RV park come and discuss the incident with you?
They just asked me what happened.
Just a second. So the answer is yes. Do you have any sort of documentation of that discussion that they had with you?
There was no documentation.
Do you remember the name of the person that you spoke to?
Yes.
Are you still at the RV park?
Yes.
Did you tell the RV park that there was a witness to this event?
No.
Well, there were two different versions of the event. One says that your dog came and attacked hers, and you say that her Chihuahua came and was aggressive towards your dog. But you have allegedly an independent witness who saw part or most of it, who you brought to court today. I assume that the plaintiff communicated to the RV park that your dog was at fault, correct?
Yes.
And you say your dog was not at fault. Is there any reason why you didn't tell the RV park that there was a witness?
Oh, because I didn't know yet.
When did you find out that he had seen anything of the event?
Maybe like 3 weeks after.
Tell me about that. How did you find out that he had seen any part of it?
Because I was talking to him about what was going on, that she was going to take me to court, and then he said that he had
so
seen.
now you were talking to your neighbor.
Right.
Which meant that you must have been at least somewhat friendly towards him.
At that time, yes.
At the time of the incident on the 9th of October.
We didn't know each other that well.
But you had lived there for a long time. How long did you live there?
Since July 20.
And how long has he been living there? How long have you been living there?
A long time, 20 years.
Long time, 20 years. So my question is, what prompted you 3 weeks later to have a discussion with him?
Because I started to get to know him by then. I worked. I worked at that time. I worked a lot. You know, so I started to conversate with my neighbor. That's.
Okay. How much were your vet bills?
At this point, it's over 10,000.
Have they been paid?
Most of them.
Okay. I'd like to see the bills, the last bill.
And can I say something about
Yeah.
what she said? First of all, she was in there way before I was. She had already been there over a year. And second of all, the thing is she couldn't have said anything 3 weeks after, because it wasn't after until my leg recovered from having to have emergency surgery from falling right after the incident happened that I even decided to file court papers. So the court papers weren't even filed
Until when?
Until June.
I didn't say they were filed.
You said 3 weeks after, but anyways, so like all this
I see the bills, please.
back in October, and I literally couldn't get to the courthouse to be able to drive to the courthouse.
How much do you owe the vet?
What I've already paid is over $2,000, or right around $2,000 in cash that I've paid. But to get her MRI, I need to pay $3,000.
There is no nexus that can be drawn between the seizures that she's having now, other than other than the vet saying that it's possible that it can be caused by trauma.
Yeah.
Other than that, that's the only thing I saw there. There was not a full report that said the trauma that she had 6 months before was the basis for these seizures that she's having. Seizures. She's 11 years old.
Seizures right after the attack.
Ms. Highland, you have to understand that you need an expert witness that you don't have to demonstrate that the seizures that your dog is currently having is a direct result of this dog attack.
Right.
Do you understand? Faith is 11 years old, and it's possible. Just a
neurology.
second. It's possible that it comes from that. It's possible it comes from something else. I don't deal in possibilities.
Right.
All I want to know is what vet bills you paid for October 9th and October 10th.
The actual total was $1,526.62 without her medicine being involved.
Okay, well, that's a reasonable vet bill for those 2 dates. She did have 2 different surgeries. And the medications that you're talking about were also included in that $1,526,
Right.
other than for the seizures that you want me to draw a connection with I'm not. And nothing more is owed to the vet for those 2 days, October 9th and 10th. Okay. Ms. Carrillo, I have to make a determination as to whether or not I believe the story that her 2 little dogs rushed up to your dog that was being chained to a step on a very, very short lead with you standing right there, and whether or not I believe that you stood there while your dog that was on a very short lead, that has never had any problems with aggression before, picked up her dog twice, because once she had puncture wounds in the stomach and once she had puncture wounds around the head. And I don't believe you. Quite frankly, I don't believe you.
Okay.
And I think you're responsible for her vet bills. I think you would have indicated.
Didn't she say that she didn't have the leash, that she wasn't sure if she was holding the leash? Her
Absolutely.
dog came
I don't answer your questions. If you're standing on your steps sweeping,
Yes.
and your dog is now chained, and you see her dog's running across, then you jump down from the step and you grab your dog. That's what you do. You have a very big dog that you keep on a very short, according to you, chain,
Yes.
and there's a reason for that. So if you're
Because-
standing with it, this is not a
That's fine.
question and answer. You're responsible for our vet bills. I believe her. $1,526. Judgment for the plaintiff. We're finished. Thank you.
This court is adjourned.
They behave like even in the courtroom,
She did get bitten by my dog, but,
they listen. Like if I start counting to 3 with them,
it was about her not having them on the leash and having control of her dogs.
they go and do what they're told
About her dog getting hurt. I mean, I went to see if it was okay.
because that's how she is.
That if my dog bites another dog, I'm gonna have to pay.
So one thing I found interesting about that defendant's testimony was that when you were in your line of questioning about whether or not her dog had ever been in another fight or with any other dog, any interaction, she said no. I thought I remembered when I was reading her answer, she stated that she had a mutual understanding with the plaintiff that when her larger dog was outside, the plaintiff's dogs would be kept inside. Why would you need to have that sort of mutual understanding unless you knew that your larger dog had a propensity for violence towards other dogs?
That's true. I forgot. Now that you mentioned it, I remember that I read about this mutual agreement. I wouldn't think that she was afraid that the Chihuahua would attack her dog.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Tracy Jennings Spencer is suing her cousin, Chris Jennings, for a loan to cover funeral costs.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Hello, Judge. Case number 2009, Jenny Spencer versus Jenny.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Spencer, are you related to Mr. Jennings?
I am.
How?
He's my cousin
How?
on our dad's side. So his father and my father, that's how we're related.
How were they related?
So his dad and my father are pretty close in age, but they are cousins themselves. But my dad is pretty young, so they're close. My dad and his father are close in age, so they were more like brothers.
I still don't understand.
My father and his father were first cousins, but I was raised by my grandparents, so that's why we're close.
Okay, so your fathers were first cousins?
Yes.
Okay. Your mother passed away.
Yes, ma'am.
When?
Mother's Day on 2020.
Were you close to your mother?
I was very close.
Did you live together?
I was taking care of her for 8 years while she was...
So you were living with her?
Yes, ma'am.
How old was she when she passed away?
58.
What did she pass away from?
Her arteries had blockage. She had surgery twice, and they couldn't do the third surgery. Plus, she had 3 strokes.
When you were taking care of your mother, was that a full-time responsibility?
Full-time. She had a colostomy bag, and plus she was in a walker before she had the strokes.
Was it just you and your mother living together?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it in her home?
It was in my home.
In your home?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that an apartment?
It was a house.
That you rented?
Yes, ma'am.
How did you and your mother support yourself?
I'm an RF technician, so I worked when I could be away from home, but when she got real bad sick where she couldn't even walk, I couldn't even work, so I couldn't even go out of town. So I work on the road a lot. And she gets a disability check, which is about $1,800, which wasn't much at all for us to survive.
Are you back at work now?
Yes, ma'am.
Who are you working for?
Myself. I'm a contractor, Extreme Communications.
When your mother passed away, Mr. Jennings, are you an only child?
Yes, ma'am.
She passed away in the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
At that time, you didn't have money for her funeral arrangements.
No, ma'am.
And you didn't have the funds to even take her body out of the hospital.
No, ma'am.
So what did you do?
Well, I thought I had insurance settlement, and I was going to take care of that, because she did have 2 burial plots. But when we went to...
Who's we?
Me and Angela.
Who is Angela?
She's my fiance. But when we went up there we've got 2 burial plots. When we went there to turn those in mortuary, they added on $10,000 or $15,000 to actually bury her. And I was unable to do that because her insurance had lapsed 2 or 3 months. You know.
So you didn't have money to take care of your mother's funeral expenses?
I did not.
Do you want to tell me how the plaintiff got involved with that?
I told Tracy exactly
No.
what... Yes.
At some point, your mother passed away on Mother's Day in 2020.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you contact Miss Spencer or did she contact you?
She contacted me.
When?
During the process of me suffering because I didn't have the cash to front my mother's funeral.
Well, you know, it's hard for me to ask the question, how did she know about that? But
Yes, ma'am.
were there other relatives?
I was posting things on Facebook.
Okay.
That's
So
how
what
she
did you
found it.
post on Facebook?
That I was trying to do a GoFundMe to help with my mother's funeral.
And how much after she died did you post something on Facebook?
Nothing much, not at all.
A day, 2 days,
Oh,
5?
about 3 or 4 days after.
Did you see that? Is that why you contacted him?
That is not why I contacted him.
Okay, so why don't you tell me why? That's not what you said in your papers, so I'm curious. Why did you contact him?
As he said, his mother had been sick for quite some time, so her death wasn't completely unexpected. We had been following her progression on Facebook, and Chris is correct. He had been taking care of his mother. They were very close. But when the family saw on Facebook that she had passed, nothing got posted about funeral arrangements. And some of the members of my family who were not on Facebook contacted me and said,
Don't tell me what they said to you.
sorry.
So you were contacted by members of your family.
Correct, that are not on Facebook,
Okay.
asking about care.
Don't tell me what they
I'm
asked.
sorry.
As a result of those conversations, did you contact him?
Eventually, I did not contact him immediately because I just didn't feel like it was the right time. I knew.
When? Was it in June?
So it was right after her passing. I contacted his stepbrother and stepsister first because when I had not seen anything for 3 days about funeral arrangements, rather than calling Chris, who I knew would have his hands full handling matters, I actually contacted his stepbrother and stepsister. And I said, do you know anything about funeral arrangements?
Nobody did.
And so they didn't know anything and suggested that I reach out to Chris. I said, well, I hate to do that. This is a really bad time, but I did it anyway. And so I called Chris and I said, Chris, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're going through a lot, but some people are asking me about your mother's arrangements and I don't know what to tell them. It's been several days. Have you picked out a mortuary? And he started crying immediately, understandably so. He said, Tracy, I'll be honest with you, I don't even have the money to get her out of the hospital. He said, it's going to cost $500 to get her out. I said, okay. And I believed, without a shadow of a doubt, that he truly didn't have the money because they had a very tight relationship. So there was no question in my mind if he had the $500 to get her out, he would have. I said, Chris, it's okay. I'll loan you the money. I'll call the hospital. I'll take care of it. Just calm down. And so we hung up. I called the hospital and I told them, I said, I'm not next of kin, but I'm going to take care of this matter on behalf of my cousin. So here's my credit card for $500. And the morgue told me that I couldn't pay $500, that was only their portion of having her body released from the morgue, that they could only send her body to a funeral home.
They have to send it someplace. If they're releasing it, they have to send it someplace.
Correct. They said that she had been there for so long that she needed to go within the next day because they can only stay there for 5 days. And
Got it.
Sorry. Okay. So they said she needs to go now. And if you don't come get her or have a funeral home come get her, we're going to have to send her to Spartanburg County and they're going to be in charge of her remains. And the next of kin is at risk of being arrested for abandonment. And so I freaked out. I called Chris back. I said, Chris, I said, it's not $500. I said, they're not going to let us get her. And do you know you're close to being arrested? And, you know, I felt really bad about that.
Where do you live?
Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Just take a look and see if you can find out next of kin responsibility. I'm surprised that you were given that information from the hospital, but I may be
in the
wrong.
morgue. Yes. So I called Chris and I said, the morgue is not going to let us get her body without a funeral home. Do you have a funeral home picked out? And I think at that time he said he didn't. And so he made some phone calls, Chris did, and then he called me back and he said, I found a mortuary. And so the mortuary that he selected was the one that ended up taking care of her remains. And so instead of me loaning him $500 to get her released from the hospital, I ended up getting stuck with $1,500 because I had to pay the mortuary.
Okay, he found a mortuary.
Yes, ma'am.
When you called the mortuary, did they tell you what it would cost?
I didn't call the mortuary to find out anything about that. She did. She agreed to pay everything.
No, just a second. I'm not getting there.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not there yet.
Yes, ma'am.
So the question is, did you call the mortuary?
I called them to see if they could take care of my mother.
That's what I asked you. I said, did you
Yes.
call the mortuary?
Yes, ma'am.
And after you spoke to the mortuary, you called the plaintiff back.
Sure did.
Okay. When you called the mortuary and she had already told you it would be $500 to get your mother's remains from the morgue, but then you had to take her remains someplace. You couldn't take them in your car.
Right.
They had to go someplace.
Yes, ma'am.
And common sense would suggest that you would ask what their cost was, what their fee was. Is not an answer.
For a cremation.
For whatever, and they told you it was how much?
They told me for the cremation, it was about $1,500 for cremation.
Okay, and then you called your cousin back.
Yes.
And let me hear the conversation, as you recall it, between yourself and your cousin.
Okay. I called her back and told her that I didn't have the money to take care of that. She goes, don't worry about it, Chris. I'll take care of it. It's exactly what was said.
Now, was that before or after you set up a GoFundMe page?
That was before.
So she took care of the bill?
Yes.
So this was 5 days after your mother's death? Shh.
Yeah.
You said it was after. Now, so it was 5 or 6 days before your mother's body was taken to the funeral home for the purposes of cremation. How many days after that did you start a GoFundMe page?
A couple days.
2 days. And what was the language in the GoFundMe page?
To help take care of my mother's funeral.
Well,
And
well,
expenses.
shh, Mr. Jennings, if what you just said to me previously was, read back to me, Whitney, what Mr. Jennings said about the conversation that he had with her. It started with, don't worry about it.
He said, okay, I called her back and told her that I didn't have the money to take care of that. She said, don't worry about it, Chris. I'll take care of it. That's exactly what was said.
Okay, good. So if she said she would take care of it, why would you post an outcry for money from strangers to bury your mother?
To go during the process of getting that money is exactly
No. Let's follow what you said, Mr. Jennings. What you told me was that you had the conversation, she took care of the bill. 2 or 3 days later, you started a GoFundMe page for your mother's funeral expenses. Is that not what he said?
Yes.
If it was a gift to you, I'm not understanding why you would start a GoFundMe page.
It's because it wasn't taken care of within 2 or 3 days, ma'am.
What do you mean it wasn't taken care of?
She didn't pay the bill within 2 or 3 days is the thing. That's the reason I did that.
Well, they wouldn't release
For backup.
they wouldn't release the body unless they got paid with a credit card.
I understand that, but I was trying
Just
to
a
have
second.
backup.
A backup for what?
Just in case you didn't
hey,
fall through.
Mr. Jennings, now you're getting cute with me.
No, ma'am.
Now you're getting cute with me.
And later today,
He said to you,
I need to borrow $2,300.
and you said to him,
Why can't you ask anybody else?
and he said to you,
His girlfriend's father, if he were to ask him, he would pry and find out that he was addicted to cocaine.
Tracy Jennings Spencer says her cousin, Chris Jennings, owes for a loan to cover his mother's funeral costs. Chris claims it was a gift.
now, the plaintiff had to give the hospital her credit card. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So before they released the body, which they had to do within a day, they had her credit card. And it wasn't until after that that you started a GoFundMe page.
But
Okay. And don't raise your hand. And how much money did you receive from this GoFundMe page?
like $200
Okay. And you received $200 within what period of time?
within probably 3 weeks.
How much of that $200 did you give to Miss Spencer?
0.
And your total cost was $1,500. Is that correct? Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,500.
This court is adjourned.
Well, I'm very pleased that she saw what really did happen.
I think everything went exactly as planned.
I tried to step up in a time of desperation and an emergency situation, and look where it got me.
Everything's fine.
I think we'll be able to move past. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still my cousin, he's still my blood, and I'm always going to love him.
I actually didn't need the answer to that question that I threw out at you with regard to whether a child is responsible for the remains of their parent, because it was just clear, you know, when you get them to do a timeline for you.
A lot of stuff unravels.
Yeah, it all unraveled because what was the reason for starting a GoFundMe page if, as he alleged in his answer, she volunteered to pay for the funeral, unless he felt an obligation. Now, the obligation had to be as a result of that conversation, that he would start a GoFundMe page. Anyway, unfortunate that she seemed like a very nice lady, very responsible, and she was very caring towards him. Shouldn't have ended up here.
Case number 2010, Hickman versus Vensloff. All parties, please step forward.
Vanessa Hickman is suing her trainer, Dylan Vensloff, for an unpaid loan.
Ms. Hickman, your case is relatively simple. You claim that you made a loan to the defendant, who was your personal trainer, when he said he was in a financial bind and he needed rent money, and he made the loan. And he paid some. His wife paid some.
Correct.
He made a couple of payments, but there is still a substantial balance.
Correct.
Mr. Vensloff said that this was not a loan, but prepayment for his training services, and that you sort of backed out of the training/nutrition program. So that's your problem. You lose your money. That's your defense, right?
Yes.
Just curious, before I get started with this case, how much do you get per hour for personal training? No, don't look over there. I want you to know that I know all about this. Everybody that I know except me has a personal trainer. I work out every day. I don't take instruction well, so I don't have a personal trainer. I have a husband who had a personal trainer. All my friends have personal trainers. So now I want you to answer my question, unless there's something extraordinary about you, which there is not. How much do you get per hour for personal training?
$75.
That's a reasonable figure. Just informational purposes. How much money did you take from Miss Hickman?
How much money did I take?
Yes, how much money did you take from me? I haven't decided what it's for, but money exchanged between you, she has proof of how much it was, and you. How much money?
I believe it was $2,300.
Is that right?
Correct.
And on what date did she give you $2,300?
I believe sometime at the end of last year, or it was close to the beginning of this year, somewhere along that time.
Date?
November 22nd, 2021.
And at that time, how long had you been training her? Since when? When did you start with her as a client?
I think like the beginning of summer last year, so I'd say...
Date?
July 2021.
Beginning, middle, or end?
Beginning.
July, August, September, October. So you had been training her for 4 months.
Yes, ma'am.
Up until November 22nd, how much money had she given you for training? Did she pay you by the week? Did she pay you by the month? How did she pay you?
Up front, first,
okay.
Monthly.
In July?
Yep.
Not yup. That's not yup.
Yes,
Yup
ma'am.
you say to your friends or to your wife. So in July,
Yes.
when you started,
Yes.
she gave you how much?
$500.
For the month of July.
Yes, ma'am.
The month of August, how much did she give you?
$500.
Is that correct?
Correct.
September,
Same amount, ma'am.
$500. October,
Same amount.
November,
Same amount.
the beginning of November.
Yeah.
Not,
Well,
not
actually,
yeah is not an answer. The beginning
Sorry.
of November, did she give you $500?
No, because that's when we had the agreement.
No. Don't give me agreement nonsense. The beginning of July, she gave you $500.
Yep.
Beginning of August,
Yep.
she gave you $500. Beginning of September,
Yes.
she gave you $500. The beginning of October, she gave you $500. How much did she give you in the beginning of November? This $2,300 was not paid until November 22nd. How much did she give you the beginning of November?
Then it must have been $500.
Is that correct? So now she has given you $2,500
Yes, ma'am.
for 5 months. She's given you $2,500.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Now I want you to tell me what happened in November after you gave him the $2,500.
So we agreed to $100 monthly payments.
This is in November?
November, after we signed the agreement.
What agreement?
The agreement was that...
No, I want to see the agreement. Don't tell me what it
Absolutely.
was. I'd like to see it. Who You wrote this?
I did.
Well, I don't actually understand it. It says, I, Mr. Venzloff, hereby accept $2,300 from my client, Vanessa Hickman, in trade and paid in advance for training. This will cover meal plans, planned workouts, in-person training, check-ins, and virtual check-ins from November 22nd, 2021 to May 15th, or 1 month of training and payment plans of no less than $100 a month, starting 12/22/21. I agree to pay back the full amount in 12 months. I actually don't understand what that means, because you agreed to pay back the full amount in 12 months by paying her no less than $100 a month, starting December 2021. First part says you're accepting this $2,300 from your client in trade and paid in advance for training, but that you will pay her $100 a month and be finished paying her in 12 months by 11/22/2022. Okay. So you wrote this up.
Yes.
I don't understand it because it doesn't make sense.
Of course.
So there had to be a reason why you picked this $2,300. He's been training you July, August, September, October, and November. You paid him $500 each month, or about $120 a week. And all of a sudden, there's a $2,300. What is there something that I said funny? All of a sudden, there's $2,300. Tell me how the $2,300 came about.
So over the course of those months, we became good friends. I see him 3 times a week. We get to know each other, talk, open up, and we're very friendly with each other. He opened up about me about having financial hardships.
No, he'd opened up. He said to you.
Yeah, he said to me, I need to borrow $2,300.
And you said to him?
Why can't you ask anybody else?
And he said to you?
His girlfriend's father, if he were to ask him, he would pry and find out that he was addicted to cocaine.
That's what he told you?
Correct.
And what did you say to him?
Oh, okay. So if I give you this money, we're going to write an agreement to cover me in case you don't pay me back.
And what did he say?
Okay. And that day on November 22nd, we wrote out the agreement.
No, you wrote the agreement.
Absolutely. I wrote it down, and he gave me a photo of his driver's license that day. And
you have a copy of that driver's license?
I do have a photo on my phone, yes.
I'd like to see it.
Of course.
So you were working, and he was working. He was making money. So if you're the wife, you say, what do you mean? We need money for rent. I'm working. You're working. What's it all about? Did you know he had a drug problem?
Vanessa Hickman claims her trainer, Dylan Venzloff, owes for an unpaid loan. Dylan says it was a trade agreement and not a loan.
Okay. Mr. Venzloff, understanding what I said to you before, that everybody that I know has a trainer. Everybody, except me. Nobody that I know has the driver's license of their trainer. Nobody. And I'm very old. Now, can you give me a logical reason why the plaintiff would have a copy of your driver's license in her phone?
To make sure that the trade agreement stays.
What's the trade agreement?
The trade agreement was that she was going to give me the money, and I was going to...
Just a second. Let's go back for a second.
Yeah, no problem.
So what she says, in part, was accurate. Is that what you're telling me?
In part.
That you became friends, you would talk to her, you had a girlfriend, you knew he had a girlfriend?
Correct.
You asked her for money?
Yes, ma'am.
Different amount of money because you were in financial difficulty?
Yes, ma'am.
And that she asked you, why couldn't you ask your girlfriend's father? Because she evidently knew that based upon the fact that you were friends, that you're the wife, girlfriend, whatever, your father has money?
Yes.
Okay. Why couldn't you ask the girlfriend's father, right?
Yes.
She asked you that question?
Yes.
And did you say to her, because I didn't want him to pry?
Yes.
Because I have a cocaine habit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so she gave you the $2,300?
Yep.
Not yup.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Perfect. And that was on the 22nd of November of last year. After she gave you that money, and you were supposed to, according to this agreement, make $100 a month payments to her. That would took That's what it says.
Yeah, if I was unavailable.
No, it doesn't say. There's nothing here that says unavailable.
Well, it's actually...
There's nothing. That's why I don't understand this agreement.
Yeah.
You see, Not yet. That's why I don't understand this agreement, because one talks about training and workouts, and one talks about you agreeing to pay her back within 12 months at no less than $100 a month. So it doesn't make any sense. So now I have to figure out what it was that really happened. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this paper says something about $100 a month. Now, did you ever give her $100 a month?
Yes, for a month.
In what months did you give her $100 a month?
I think it was the first 3 months.
And you gave it to her how?
Via Venmo.
Did he give you the first 3 months?
He gave me the last 2 months, and his wife paid me the first month.
That would be you?
Yes.
Stand up, please. Tell me your last name.
Venzloff.
When did you find out that your husband had taken money from the plaintiff?
When she had sent me a message on Instagram asking for me to send her money that he was late on a payment.
And that was in what month?
I believe mid-January she messaged me.
January of 2022.
Correct.
And up until that time, your husband had not told you that he took money from the plaintiff. That's an easy question.
I don't believe so, no.
He had not. Well, that's what it sounded like. You didn't know about it because the first you heard about it was when she sent you a message. So he had not told you that he took money from her before. Now, when you found out, you confronted him about this, did you take money from the plaintiff?
I did.
And what did he tell you?
He told me that he had to pay for rent that month.
Were you living together?
We were already married.
Were you working?
I was.
So you were working, and he was working. He was making money. So if you're the wife, you say, what do you mean? We need money for rent. I'm working. You're working. What's it all about? Did you know he had a drug problem?
That was when I found out.
Okay. Well, that's a fair question. I like the honesty. Did you have discussions with him about that?
Yes.
Did he go into rehab?
Yes.
Great. When did he go into rehab?
He went for a week in December into a detox, and then he went for a month this last June, I believe.
Because he had a relapse?
Yes.
How long was it in June?
30 days.
During December and June, had he ever been arrested?
No.
So he did this voluntarily?
Yes.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Take a breath. All fine. Your husband owes her $1,800. That's what she's suing for. That's what he owes her. He knows he owes her that money. She was doing a good thing. She was being kind to him. And probably, ultimately, if he stays clean, saved his life. Mm-hmm. Reasonable, you know, because but for that, you wouldn't have found out, you wouldn't have forced him to take some action. Is that what happened?
Yes.
Do you have a drug problem?
I don't know.
Does your father still not like him?
They're best friends.
They're best friends?
Yes.
Interesting. I'm absolutely shocked. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,800. We're finished.
This court is adjourned.
I thought that she handled it very well. I didn't need to go over all the details. She did that all for me.
Honestly, you know, it was a trade agreement, which it clearly states in the first part, you know, so I had the entire year.
I don't think that he could have sent me the payments. I had to keep...
To either pay her back or train her, and she served me before the contract was even up.
Crying and messaging him for it. I think court was where it needed to be settled.
All she wanted was the money back, but I told her I was completely available. Then she moved out of the area.
He's a great trainer, absolutely amazing trainer, hands down. Borrowing money, not the smartest decision.
Well, I think he could have handled the situation differently, but I think he was trying to do his best to get us out of a sticky situation.
You know, I think it's about time to find someone else.
I remember my law school days, Sarah. Not clearly, but I remember my law school days. And you know how important it is, I always say you should have a writing. Mm-hmm. But you're supposed to have a writing that's clear. And I know that there's a rule of law that if a contract or an agreement is ambiguous, that a third party can't figure out, fact finder can't figure out what the intent of the parties was. Was it a training agreement, which is what he said, which is a lot of baloney? Was it a loan that you're allowed to go beyond that contract? So your experience in law school is much closer.
I did just study this, so it's true that if a fully integrated agreement, meaning that it's clear, the meeting of the minds between parties is clear to a third-party fact finder, then usually outside evidence is not allowed because you clearly have what the meeting of the minds of the parties was. However, in a case like this, when it's more ambiguous or the terms are ambiguous or you're not quite clear what the meeting of the minds was for, a loan, like you said, or training.
Previously on Judy Justice.
You were looking for a job. And what were you supposed to do?
Bartend, close, open, and run the concession stand.
I want you to do a step-by-step why you contacted the authorities.
Chris was still giving out free alcohol to people, pouring it, wasn't even checking people's IDs. So I called the ABC and I said, I think there's suspicion that he's giving minors alcohol.
And that was very distressing to you. So distressing that you said to him, do you have any other work for us?
Yes.
And did he say, I have an apartment complex that needs painting?
Yes.
And it was after the painting kerfuffle that you called alcohol beverage.
So we shouldn't have reported
fired.
it at all.
No,
we shouldn't have
I'm
reported it?
trying to get to your motive, sir.
And now, the conclusion. Noah Joyner and Harlan Hendrickson have accused their former employer, Christopher Ricks, of vandalizing Noah's car and refusing to pay wages. Christopher claims they slandered his business.
Now, you have photographs of the place before you started painting and afterwards? You have any photographs?
Absolutely.
I'd like to see them.
It's just the paint on the floor.
Just a second.
Okay, very well.
I have eyes. I can look at the pictures.
So
I just want to take a look. If I need any.
How they are before we paint them. That's before they're painted, Your Honor.
These are your photographs.
Yes, ma'am.
You painted the floor.
No, ma'am. We had to declutter a couple of units that had stuff.
One unit.
Like that.
Shh, don't speak. You had to, what you call declutter, and you had to sweep it up before you started painting.
It was worse.
Okay. And did you?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this a picture of what you allege it looked like?
All of the units had stuff in them just like that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this is the floor that you painted?
Yes.
Is that the floor that they painted?
One of the three.
Okay. So they painted the floors. Did you paint anything else other than the floors?
Well, we painted the walls.
They painted the walls. They dripped on the floors, Your Honor.
Okay.
They're brand new flooring.
We were told it didn't have to be perfect.
Just a second. You didn't put these floors in, did you? I thought they painted them.
No. They were to do touch-up only, and there was one unit that needed to be finalized, and that was the one you saw that was bad.
We were having to
the floors were
paint walls.
I told you, don't speak when he is. I'll come back to you.
The floors were brand new, and like I said, I provided drop cloths and such. They didn't use them.
That's not true, Your Honor.
Shh. What is this?
That's the one unit that was not completely emptied out.
Okay. This one.
Yeah, there was one single unit.
And this one.
That's the same unit.
And this.
Same unit.
Okay. And the rest of them were cleaned out.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
All new floor.
Yes, the pictures of the, yes.
The pictures of the mess are all one unit of the 20. Okay. And how many units did they paint for you, Mr. Ricks?
They didn't finish any of the units. They
Okay.
were in 3 units, Your Honor.
Okay.
And 3 units have damage.
Okay. What you're telling me is they didn't do a good job in 3 units.
Correct.
Okay. Well,
They
that,
didn't finish it at all.
That, I'd like to see the photographs of what they didn't finish.
The paper copies, there you go. There should be one that's a door that's not even painted. You can see it's two-tone. And the flooring is where they, I guess, scraped the floor.
Okay, this is the same picture as this.
No, that's different. I can show you on my phone, too, if you'd like. They're different. It's like in one of the areas, they tried to use a tool to scrape paint off in different areas, and that's what was left.
You're talking about...
Me with any
That's
tools.
not true. There was no tools provided for us at all.
Just a second. I didn't ask you anything. Is what you're saying to me, sir, that the reason you didn't... I assume you weren't paid for this work. Is that correct?
Your Honor.
Not even for cleaning out that unit, really.
Weren't paid. Now, I assume, Mr. Ricks, that you didn't pay them because you thought that they did a poor job.
No, ma'am, that's not accurate.
Why didn't you pay them?
They didn't do the job.
They worked there at some point.
I agreed with Harlan only to pay him $3,000.
Harlan, that was you.
Yes.
That's you. You agreed with Harlan.
For that job.
Yes.
Your Honor, that's
for
incorrect.
$3,000.
You're almost finished. Do you understand? You're almost done. 1, 2, 3 warnings, then I'm finished with you. And it wouldn't bother me at all. I have to tell you, it wouldn't bother me at all. Now, what arrangement did you make as far as payment is concerned?
On June...
Mr. Hendrickson started the job first on June 23rd.
He was to meet me, and he did. He was late. He was supposed to meet me early. I showed him the whole scope of the project because he hadn't been there, and what I wanted done, what I expected. And we agreed on the price of $3,000. And after they got halfway done, which was 10 units, I would pay him $1,500. And then when they were complete, I would pay the entire $3,000. They didn't get past 3, Your Honor.
3 of the 20.
Yes, ma'am, and they didn't finish any of those at all.
Okay. What I'm saying to you, Mr. Ricks, you took one guy
Right.
who you didn't know from a hole in the wall.
Yes, ma'am.
You took a second guy who you knew was there because I believe that you knew he was there painting with Mr.
Right.
Joyner.
Mr. Hendricks actually fired him twice. You can see in text message if you need to see that.
You mean Mr. Hendrickson fired Mr. Joyner?
Yeah, he says right here.
Just a second.
Well, let me just pull up the text message since it's so
But you
accurate.
do know that Mr. Joyner was there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It was a group. They decided to do a group thing. This is right here it says, never mind, Noah's not going to help me anymore.
Group chat.
And then there's an additional where he says again that I'm going to let Noah have a couple of days off.
Just a second. Mr. Hendrickson, so on the 29th, you indicated to Mr. Ricks that Noah, that would be you, is not going to be helping me anymore.
Yes.
Yes, and you want to tell me why?
Noah and I had...
No, look at me.
Noah and I had an argument at the painting job
Tell me
because
about
we were arguing...
Tell me about the argument, sir.
We were
When did you have it?
arguing about the detail that we were putting into our work. I walked in and Noah was paying a lot of attention to detail, and Chris told me that the job did not have to be perfect. He just wanted it to be done.
Just a second. So Noah was trying to be careful.
Yes.
And you said you don't have to be so careful.
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that what it boils down to?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that was on the 29th.
Yes, correct.
So after that, he said he's not going to work for you anymore.
Correct.
Now, so I gather from that statement that since you were working there since the 23rd, you didn't feel as if you had to be so careful to detail.
That is...
I mean, that would follow from what you just said to me. If Noah wanted to be more careful to detail, you say, oh, no, you don't have to be so careful to detail. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? And goodbye, which is what this says. So I have to assume, conjure up in my mind that if you doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be such a great job. It can be, as my great-grandmother used to say, there's a difference between a schmearer and a painter.
That's right.
Now, I don't know who would understand that except another Jewish grandmother. But you understand the connotation. You can smear paint. I have a 9-year-old granddaughter who can smear paint on a wall. But if I want something professionally done, I try to get a painter.
I told Chris I was not a professional.
Just a second. You see, that's my problem with Mr. Ricks. If you want something done right, get a man, not a boy. Tell me the worst thing he told you to do.
I don't know what you were wanting from me.
What I want you to do is to tell me what he told you about black mold. Don't make it up.
Defendant Christopher Ricks claims Noah Joyner and Harlan Hendrickson slandered his business on social media. Noah and Harlan say they were not paid for painting Christopher's apartment complex.
Now, if I wanted somebody to work on one of my cars, I would not get somebody off the street who was selling popcorn at a concession stand and say to them, by the way, my car over there needs a new battery. Now, would I take my car back to the same dealership? Maybe not, because they're very expensive. But would I find somebody who at least had a referral, a recommendation? I have a 20-unit apartment complex that was empty. You want to use it as a business. You don't hire 2 schmearers to go and take care of your property. But you have to, if you didn't like their work, fire them. And if their work was not complete and only 3 units were touched, which I don't think that they argue with. So far, that's correct, Mr. Hendrickson?
That is incorrect.
How many units did you
5.
paint? 5.
And I actually painted 7, but I didn't complete the last 2. I just did the trim in it.
So you completed 5 units out of 20.
Yes.
I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. And you agreed to $3,000.
That's incorrect, Your Honor.
How much?
We did not have a meeting to talk about a payment until the 29th, and that was actually part of the reason that him and I were arguing. Chris and I and Noah met at a coffee shop, and we spoke about how much we would be getting paid. We agreed on a $3,000 price for the end of the month of July because Christopher was supposed to be going on a vacation until July 20th.
So the $3,000 was mentioned.
It was mentioned, and then he told me and Noah, Chris told me and Noah that on the 30th he would pay us half of what he was going to be paying us.
Just a second. You were hired to paint 20 units.
Yes, Your Honor.
You painted 5, which is 1/4 of the $3,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's say those apartments were complete, not satisfactorily to him, but now you both agree that the $3,000 price was mentioned for the 20 units.
Yes.
It would be $750 if they did 5 units.
That's all, $750. That would be $750 if you completed only 1/4 of them. Okay. Did you pay them any money for painting, yes or no?
No.
Okay, good. So best case scenario for the painting is $750. And I haven't gotten to his counterclaim yet, but you have one more claim. And your claim is that Mr. Ricks vandalized your car by throwing paint on it.
Sure.
Tell me when that happened.
We woke up July 20th, 2020.
7:20. Where did you wake up?
At our house, our apartment. Hot Springs,
Okay,
Arkansas.
tell me what happened.
I woke up to my car being splattered with the same color paint that we were using in his apartments.
Okay, so your car had paint on it when you woke up. Did you see anybody do it?
No, ma'am.
Just let me take a look at the photograph. Okay. Did you file a police report?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to see it. Okay, so no one saw this, but you say that there is a video that you have. I assume, Mr. Ricks, unless you want to tell me that you did, in fact, throw paint primer on his car.
I absolutely did not.
Okay, and you did not see anybody throw paint primer on the car. But you say there was a video. Noah stated that he has video from his apartment complex pointing right at Noah's vehicle.
I think the police put that in there because they had interviewed.
So there is no video?
No, ma'am.
And you did not witness this?
No, ma'am.
And other than thinking that this paint primer was a result of actions and retaliation for something that you did, do you have any witness that saw him do that?
No, ma'am.
I have to see proof that the defendant had anything to do with this car.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? Did you take the car in to be cleaned?
Yes, I cleaned it myself just to avoid further damage.
Yes.
But after I cleaned it, I took it to the auto body shop to see what the actual repairs
Okay,
were.
do you have pictures of it after you cleaned it?
After we cleaned it, it looked somewhat like this. And then we had to take it to the body shop. They buffed out the rest of it for us.
So what you're telling me is you took it to an auto body shop, and the auto body shop...
They helped clean up the rest of it, but they still took off our top coat.
Okay, very good. Well, you have no proof he did it. So far, he owes you $750.
May I interject that he doesn't even own that car?
I don't care. I'm not giving him any money for the car. There's no proof you did anything to the car. Okay, I'm not going to get into filing a false ABC complaint with the sheriff, because he's not going to be able to prove to me that it's true other than by what he says are his own observations. He doesn't have anybody here who's under the age of 21 who's going to testify that you served him alcohol. So I'm not going to entertain that part of your claim. Money owed for slander, that I would like to see. That's your cross complaint. So far, plaintiff has $750 for painting 1/4 of the places that he was contracted to do.
This is the first document, and I had calls just pour in, wanting to know if I'd seen it. And
Just
then,
a second. Don't tell me you had calls pouring in, sir, because that's
ma'am.
hearsay. What's the date on this? This one that I'm reading. It says 1 day ago.
It was around the first couple of weeks of July.
Okay. I'd like you to tell me, Mr. Joyner, the conversation, where it took place and under what circumstances, when you had a conversation with Mr. Ricks about covering up certain hazards. I'd like to hear that.
What would you like to hear?
I'd like to hear where the conversation took place, exactly what you said to him and what he said to you.
Where it took place?
Yes, where it took place, exactly what you said to him and exactly what he said to you.
I'm confused. So, like, what is?
We are on now.
I know the post about
a post.
Yeah.
We're on now a post. So I want you to tell me when you had the conversation where you were and what you said to him, mostly what he said to you, about covering up certain things with paint.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So we were told to cover up holes and stuff with caulking and then paint over it. And then we were told that
Now look at me.
I was told to go declutter one of the units that had a bunch of old parquet tile, ceramic tiles piled high to the ceiling with old ceiling fans deteriorating.
That was the unit that was on.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right.
And
so he told me that
I want you to tell me the worst thing he told you to do in the apartment complex. Tell me the worst thing he told you to do.
There was a lot of terrible.
No. Just stop and think of what is the worst thing he told you to do, the worst instruction he gave you.
Pretty much that I should just do it without the proper protective.
No, that's general, sir.
Okay.
I asked you specific. You posted something about him, about his apartment complex, about the work that you were doing, and I want you to tell me the worst thing he told you to make short shrift of or to cover up.
Water damage, black mold.
Okay, let's go to black mold. When did you have a discussion with him about black mold? Where were you?
He told me to declutter the apartment. So that would be Wednesday, June.
So there was one apartment that he told you to declutter. Okay, and that would be June what?
Monday, June 27th. I think that's what that.
Was he there in person?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'd like you to tell me what he said to you and what you said to him.
Told me to go.
Look here.
Told me to declutter the unit, take out all of it, throw it away, and to just.
No, don't look over there.
To clean, just to clean it, basically.
To clean it.
So that it would be ready to be painted.
And?
I did. I cleaned it.
And?
I'm done.
You done?
I don't know what else to say. That's.
Well, I want you to clean it. Doesn't tell me anything about black mold.
I don't know what you were wanting from me.
What I want you to do is to tell me what he told you about black mold. Don't make it up. Your post, based upon your testimony, was slanderous.
I got confused. I don't know what you were really trying to ask out of me.
I asked you specific questions. You gave me answers. Now is not the time to play catch up.
Defendant Christopher Ricks claims Noah Joyner and Harlan Hendrickson slandered his business on social media. Noah and Harlan say they were not paid for painting Christopher's apartment complex.
Now, tell me what he told you about black mold.
He didn't tell me anything about the black mold.
Great. And what did he tell you about rat feces?
Didn't tell me anything about rat feces. I handled all that stuff without me.
Shh. Then you did that all yourself. Well, in this posting you said, Chris, that would be you, wanted us to paint over chips, possible, dust, maybe, mold, never. He never told you that. That's what you just told me. Black mold, rat feces, and urine. He never told you to cover up those things. You may have done it, but according to you, he just said, clean it.
He had told me to cover up the mold that was in
I
the
don't
utility
believe that.
closets of the apartment.
Oh, I don't believe that. In a second. That's Mr. Joyner.
Yeah, it was Mr.
No,
Joyner,
this is
but
Mr. Joyner's
trying to communicate
post.
together.
And he never told him anything. According to him, he said, just clean it. You have the second post?
That one was taken down, and this is the second post that he reposted, and then his account got blocked because they don't allow that type of behavior. This is the next one, and this is where he claimed to be a bartender on Facebook, and he just took it down recently. It's been up there for months, and I never hired him for a bartender.
That's all right. I don't care. That's not important.
Okay.
What I'm concerned about is what he says that you told him to do, which you did not.
Right.
He acknowledges you did not. Now, you have no witnesses here.
I was going to bring one person, and she's got COVID.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda. You have
yes,
no
I have
witnesses
no one.
here.
I have no one, Your Honor.
Very good. Okay. I find that the things that you posted are slanderous with regard to what he instructed you to do, Mr. Joyner. You were the posting person as far as covering up black mold, feces, and urine, and therefore to beware of Rick's Realty. Your post, based upon your testimony, was slanderous because he never told you that. So
But you never really cleared that. I'm sorry, you never really cleared it up. I got confused. I don't know what you were really trying to like ask out of me.
No, just a second.
It was
I don't care
told
what
to me that I needed to take care of all that stuff and throw it away. Yes, ma'am. It was told to me that. That's why I posted. It was a warning as to like so no one else would have to deal with that same stuff.
Very good. Very good. I'm ruling now, so now it's my time. I asked you specific questions. You gave me answers. Now is not the time to play catch-up. I find that by posting that he instructed you to cover up black mold, people responded to, actually, and rat feces, I don't know how you cover rat feces and urine with paint, and to stay away from his place of business without cause, because what you told me was, he told me to clean it up, that's slanderous. And so on the counterclaim that he has for slander, I am awarding him $2,750. That's a net to him of $2,000 because your claim of $750 for wages is absorbed by his counterclaim. So on your claim, you get zero, zippity-doo-dah. I'm awarding him $2,000 for slander. We're done here. Thank you very much.
What about the damages,
We
Your
are
Honor?
finished. Hire a professional, Mr. Riggs. You want a schmearer, that's what you get.
This court is adjourned.
Regardless of terminology and how things got messed up, why would you expect someone to clean up rat feces, all of this stuff, and do it for free?
It's clear no good deed goes unpunished. I tried to help those kids.
Don't understand any of this, really.
Well, they were trying to extort money from me and not do work and be lazy and just get paid for work they didn't do.
We're trying to move on.
We're going to move on.
You kind of try to give people chances when they're down on their luck. I've always been a philanthropist to try to help people out, and sometimes you get burned.
First of all, if you're an employee and you're working either by the hour or by the day, you're not a weekly employee or a bi-weekly salaried employee, you're supposed to keep track of the hours where you work, especially if you want to, if there is a potential of suing later for them.
As the plaintiff, that is your burden. I was interested to see that you were willing to take that information from the defendant, because if it were me, if the plaintiff didn't have it, that's not the defendant's burden to prove the plaintiff's case. So I knew you did it to sort of round out the sides of the case, but I think that if you as the plaintiff want to come here and ask the court for money, you better have your ducks in a row. And
well, that's true. That was true. That was probably an error for me. Not that he got anything, but
we got where we needed to go.
We got where we needed to go, but that's true. It's not the defendant's burden.
Yeah.
Although the defendant acknowledged that he worked for him.
He did. Very forthcoming and honest. So, but that again played better for the defendant, as we saw in the ruling, that he was professional.
You're supposed to have your ducks in a row.
Yes, and as a plaintiff, you don't get any money if you can't even keep track of the hours that you work.
The second thing is that the call to alcohol and beverage, if you feel as if you're doing a public service by reporting behavior that you think could be potentially dangerous, I support that. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing it as a retaliatory act and you don't do it immediately, it's like reporting suspected child abuse. Mm-hmm. If you see a child being abused or neglected and you do nothing and wait a month until you have a fight with the person who is the abuser, that creates a suspicion that it's vindictive and there's a motive to lie.
Of course.
Because it wasn't done immediately.
And they sought another job from the same man after reporting him.
Right. To the defendant's detriment, in my eyes, is if you have a big apartment complex and you have guys who were in the jewelry business and didn't make it, then came to work for you in your theater and really weren't very good at that either, then I wouldn't hire them to house paint.
Yeah. That actually requires a skill.
Without any credentials. So I think that you have to be careful if you have a valuable piece of real estate.
Agreed.
Anyway, he can't slander him, and he did.
I think it all worked out how it was supposed to.
I hope so.
Albert Lee is suing pilot instructor Ed Meyer for damage resulting from Ed moving his plane.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Case 2145, Lee versus Meyer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lee, you are an amateur pilot?
Yes, I was yes.
And you owned your own plane?
I bought it to train in, yes.
When did you purchase the plane?
In, I believe, April of 2021.
Did you buy it new or used?
I bought it used.
What kind of plane is it?
It's a Cirrus SR-22, 2010 type Golf.
What did you pay for it?
I paid $420,000 for it, I believe.
Is there a mortgage on the...
Yes, there is.
How much?
It's $2204 per month.
You paid $425,000 for the plane.
Yeah, I put a down payment on it. The outstanding balance is $347,000. The payment per month is $2,022.
I don't need the payment per month. I just wanted to know what you paid for it and how much you put into the plane.
Yes.
The defendant is a pilot, licensed pilot, and he was giving you some training on the plane.
Certified flight instructor, yes.
It is your claim that at some point, you'll tell me when, that the defendant was operating the plane by himself. You weren't there, and he was moving it from one part of the FBO to another part, and he hit a cone and caused substantial damage to the propeller and the engine. And while you had your insurance did cover some of it, according to you, it did not cover all of the expenses, and you want Mr. Meyer to be responsible for that. So it's a simple question. Mr. Meyer, do you remember the date that you were operating the plane when Mr. Lee was not there?
Yes.
What date?
It was in April sometime.
April of 2022?
Correct.
Do you remember the date, Mr. Lee?
Yes.
What date?
It's April 22nd.
Would that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. And from what I read in the papers, Mr. Meyer had, in fact, taken you out, but then the weather got bad. You decided that you would make your way home and that he would get the plane home when the weather was better.
Correct.
And that was on or about April 22nd.
I flew home on a commercial flight the day before on April 21st.
And you stayed with the plane.
Yes.
Now, would you agree, Mr. Meyer, that if, in fact, you hit an object with the plane, it would be your responsibility?
Yes.
Because it would mean that there was some sort of negligence involved.
Right.
And then there would be the issue of damages. Mr. Lee, you were not present when this incident happened.
I was not.
Not present.
I was not present. I was able.
No, you were not present.
I was not present.
That's the answer. Was this witness present?
He was not present, but he was the one responsible for procuring the evidence on what happened and how the propeller was damaged.
Who does he work for?
He has his own flight school, and he also manages my airplane in terms of the maintenance and the upkeep.
Okay. Could you step up, please? Tell me your last name.
Last name is Williams.
Mr. Williams, were you charged with gathering the evidence to determine what happened to the plane on the 22nd of April?
Yes, I was.
And you're paid a monthly fee by the plaintiff to manage his plane.
That's correct.
Did you retain the defendant as an instructor, or did Mr. Lee?
That was both decided by Mr. Lee and Mr. Myers to fly for him.
But you
He's
did
an
not.
independent contractor. At that.
You did not have anything to do with, as the manager of the plane, you didn't have anything to do with selecting Mr. Meyer.
I did select Mr. Meyer to fly with Albert.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. Because were you the one who introduced him to Mr. Meyer?
That's correct.
When, Mr. Lee, did you start to work with Mr. Meyer?
It was probably a prior flight where we flew to San Francisco for a business meeting I had. After that, I believe it was...
In what month?
Roughly about the same month.
In April?
Yeah, in
April. So you didn't know him for a long time?
No, not very long.
I'm going to get back to you in a minute, Mr. Williams. Prior to the defendant, had anybody else been an instructor for you?
Yes. Clinton was my primary instructor, but I flew with some other instructors as well.
But it wasn't until the month that this incident occurred that you had been connected with the defendant?
Correct.
Okay. Now, sir, how were you advised that the plane that you managed was in an accident?
I received a phone call from Ed saying that there was a problem.
From whom?
From Mr. Myers, that there was a problem with the aircraft after he taxied and did the run-up and returned the aircraft back to Signature in Las Vegas. We notified and contacted a...
Did you ask, what you would usually ask is what happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Just a second, and what did he say to you?
He said that he was having instrument problems with the aircraft and he wasn't able to take off, so he returned the aircraft. At that point in time, I contacted a Cirrus Service Center. I had 2 technicians go out and look at the aircraft, see what was wrong. At the time, the technicians found that they...
Don't tell me what they found.
Okay.
You can't tell me what they found. It's hearsay.
They sent me pictures of the damage of the propeller.
May I see the photographs? Okay, so that's a fresh damage.
Correct.
Can I scroll this?
Yes, you may.
Or it's just one? Okay, so you have a picture of that. You have a picture of the cone that has a slice in it.
Correct, that's the object he hit. We also have a video showing the plane taxi and hitting the cone at the
I'd like to see that as well.
Okay.
Okay, let's see what we got.
As you can see where the...
Just one second, Mr. Meyer, is that a fair and accurate representation of where the plane was before you moved it?
It should be on the last, on the far left side of that Learjet.
Okay. Oh. Mr. Meyer, do you see that you went over a cone?
It's interesting. I didn't even notice there was a cone.
You may not notice it, but you see it now.
Yes.
Okay. Your hitting of the cone caused damage to that plane. I mean, you're not talking about flying a 747. You're talking about a little single-prop plane. Yeah, they like those planes you put together, used to put together with rubber bands. I wouldn't put my behind in one of those planes for all the money in the world.
Albert Lee claims pilot instructor Ed Meyer is responsible for damage after Ed moved Albert's plane.
Okay.
In all of my years of flying, which is pretty significant, I was an airline pilot too, I've never, ever experienced that in my life.
Okay, but you see it now.
Yes.
It's not an on purpose. It's, you know, that's why they call them accidents. We don't mean for them to happen.
Right.
We don't mean for them to happen, but you do see that the plane did hit a cone.
Right.
Okay, and I have photographs of the cone that has a slice in it, and the same kind of slice from one of the propellers. Now, so that's conceded that Mr. Meyer did, in fact, hit the cone, which in all probability caused damage to the plane, caused damage to the propeller. Now, tell me about your insurance.
The insurance covered the propeller. They covered the teardown of the engine. When something strikes the propeller, they have to tear apart the engine, make sure the components...
Do you have those,
that
paperwork for me? I'd like to see it.
Okay, so here is the insurance-covered portion, and here is my covered portion that I had to come out of pocket to pick up the plane.
Okay.
And I can explain both invoices. And if you flip to the last page, that'll have the total. Insurance covered about 60-something thousand for the propeller and the engine teardown.
Okay, so the damaged propeller, Mr. Williams, causes you to have to take apart the engine, fix the engine if there was damage to the engine. Am I correct?
That's correct. The FAA requires anytime you strike an object with a propeller, the engine has to be inspected in the component parts. So the
component parts of the engine?
Yeah, with the damage, potential damage of the engine. Internal damage that could be caused by striking an object.
Okay. The insurance covered how much, sir? Mr. Lee?
It's, sorry, it's on the invoice 60, I think it was 63,000, 64,000. It's on the last page.
The last page shows
a deposit
$63,000.
Yes, that's it.
The deposit was 40, balance due was 23. Did the insurance company pay the entire 63?
This entire
$63,000. This is what was submitted to them.
Yes.
Okay, now I'd like you to take a look at this, Mr. Meyer. No, I'm going to actually ask Mr. Williams to take a look at this document. These are the items, Mr. Williams, that Mr. Lee says were uncovered. I would like you to go through all those items and tell me which of those items relate to the engine and which do not.
Okay, is this the total?
Carefully, because I'm going to potentially ask you about each individual thing, because there looks to me like some things that bear no relation to an engine.
Okay, so most of the items that you see that are airworthiness on the airframe are the items that need to be inspected or replaced from the teardown. So your item 1, item 2, 3, 4, item 5, 6, 7, 8. These are all items that the repair shop goes through the engine and assesses whether it needs.
Well, tell me how the brakes would be impacted.
I don't think
impacted by hitting the.
Which invoice?
And I don't know, but how brakes would be impacted by hitting a nose cone.
Brake lining, I don't know what that is.
Okay. Yeah, some of these items, Your Honor, such as one of these items, the brake lines, as you pointed out, is probably not part of the.
Well, that's what I want you to go through, sir.
Okay.
Do you understand? I want you to take a marker, a pen, and circle, because I don't know a whole lot about airplanes, but I know a little bit about airplanes. I know what's routine maintenance and what has to be taken care of, because a plane either falls on its nose or falls on its tail, both of which I've experienced.
Well, this is a small invoice. This is not your, this is a 12.
Mr. Williams, don't ask him. I didn't ask you to have a conference with him.
Okay.
I asked you to look at that. You're the management company. I want you to strike those items that are not related to this accident and go through them very carefully, because...
Can I make a comment? Okay.
Nope.
To you directly?
Nope.
Okay.
Can I ask you something?
Can you ask me something?
Yeah. Well, they should tell you those cones are made of plastic.
I don't care. They're heavy cones. You hit the cone, and the plane flew perfectly fine before you hit the cone. It didn't run after you hit the cone. You don't have to be a genius to figure out the cone caused, your hitting of the cone caused damage to that plane. I mean, you're not talking about flying a 747. You're talking about a little there's a single prop plane.
Right.
Yeah. Me, they like those planes you put together, we used to put together with rubber bands. I wouldn't put my behind in one of those planes for all the money in the world.
The only items I can see, Your Honor, are two items that may not be related to the accident, items 7 and 8.
Okay, may I have that back, please, sir? And you are familiar with planes, sir, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're saying is item...
The circled item.
7 and 8.
Correct.
So we have...
There's a couple of...
We have right and left main gear, but which is 143 plus 270 plus 66. What about item 9? Pitch, trim, jab, nut, loose. What is that?
Probably what they do during the inspection and the tear down, they go through the aircraft itself, make sure it's airworthy. So they probably caught another item or two. You can probably put that on item that's wasn't part of the accident.
The big ticket items, adding up all of these items, Mr. Meyer, that probably have no relation to the accident which you caused.
Correct.
Still bring the total amount to more than this court's jurisdictional limit. Can you tell me, sir, why your insurance, Mr. Williams, let's go back to you. You manage this plane. Can you tell me why Mr. Lee's insurance didn't cover all the damage to the plane?
A lot of the prospective renters or instructors that everybody uses, or we used in this case, carry their own insurance for this type of incident. Their insurance covers basically downtime, loss of operation, or in this case...
You mean Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Would have his own. Do you have your own insurance?
No.
No. Don't you do a check to find out if they have their own insurance before you recommend someone?
He had insurance, but it was lapsed.
If you have insurance that's lapsed, then you have no insurance.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you're lucky that he's not suing you.
Albert Lee is accusing pilot instructor Ed Meyer of hitting a cone and damaging his plane. Ed says Albert was already paid by his insurance company.
Okay. Mr. Williams, you were the one who recommended
That's
Mr.
correct,
Meyer.
we did.
Don't you do a check to find out if they have their own insurance before you recommend someone?
He had insurance, but it was lapsed.
Well, that he didn't have insurance. I get that all the time. If you have insurance that's lapsed, then you have no insurance.
Yeah. As a flight school, our instructors are required to carry the insurance.
Okay, but that didn't happen here.
That's correct.
So you're lucky that he's not suing you, because you managed the plane for him. And you recommended him, Mr. Williams. You know, when you have a management company that manages your plane, they're supposed to make certain that if you have a certain kind of plane, that you have pilots certified to fly those kinds of planes. And if they give me a list of pilots, and those pilots aren't certified to fly the kind of plane that I might have, then it's the fault of the management company.
In this case here, the plaintiff and the defendant were working together as far as their payment. and the fees they were going to charge.
That's okay. They may have been working head to head. I mean, it was Mr. Meyer's fault, but I'm just telling you that Mr. Lee relies on your advice. What business are you in, Mr. Lee?
I do commercial real estate. I sell shopping centers and office buildings.
Okay, that's not his business. That's why he hires you. And if he hires you, he asks you for recommendations as to where to get the plane repaired, for an instructor. Now, the fact that he may pay him independently, he's relied on you for information. So I suggest, Mr. Williams, that you tighten up your ship a little bit. Mr. Meyer, you're responsible to the plaintiff for the damage that you caused his plane. Why did you let your insurance lapse?
It had lapsed. I just didn't even realize the fact that it had lapsed. I just realized the fact that when this came about, that's what happened.
Well, when was the last time you paid premiums?
Probably about a year before that.
Anything else you want to tell me, Mr. Meyer? You owe him $10,000. You caused the damage. You have to fix it. Judgment for the plaintiff. We're finished. Thank you.
This court is adjourned.
I understand her point, the fact that what she saw.
I thought she's very fair.
These cones are made out of plastic.
It's hard to believe. It sounds like a gunshot when he hit the cone, and triggered several warnings. And for him to say he had no idea, it's a little bit hard to believe.
They don't have much weight to them.
With the loud bang after you hit it, it's quite obvious that you should have stopped and shut down and inspect the damage.
There normally is never a cone at the 12 o'clock position. They're at the left side and the right side.
They place cones all the way around the aircraft, and it's part of your responsibility as a pilot in command to do a walk around pre-flight, make sure there's no object in front of your aircraft.
When I taxied out halfway down, that's when I recognized there was an ICAS message that came on.
I finally got it back, and no more student pilots, so won't let any CFIs fly for a while.
You know what I thought about in this case, Sarah? That lay people have to look at something, lay people, and while I'm a judge and have certain expertise, I have no expertise in reading slips that show what's been done on a car or an airplane or a train or a boat.
But we have common sense.
But we have common sense. And your brakes are not part of an engine. Yeah. You know, you have an engine job, and then you have a brake job, and you have a...
I saw where you were going.
Different kind. And, you know, if you have an accident that impacts on the right driver's door, if you put in a new wheel casing in the left rear door, well, that has nothing to do with an accident.
Probably just an oversight. He did state that those two items were not part of, you know.
He did.
He did at the end, but it just feels a little uneasy when they try and slip those things in there, that just common sense doesn't ring true, that it comes from the science.
Yeah, you know, front, back, you know, the head of a horse, the tail of a horse, it doesn't fit in. And there's really no difference between not having insurance when you're driving a car and not having insurance as a flight instructor. Yeah, that's pretty serious.
I would think there would be a more rigorous check on that before you get behind an aircraft, the wheel of an aircraft.
Absolutely. You would think that there would be. Yeah. As Florence.
হ্যালো ভিউয়ার্স, নতুন একটি ভিডিওতে সকলকে স্বাগতম। আজকে মূলত হচ্ছে আপনার একটি আলমারির বার্নিশ করার পর একটি আবরণ দিবে বা আস্তর দিবে হচ্ছে স্প্রে করে। এই স্প্রের মাধ্যমে আপনি হচ্ছে আলমারির যে গ্লেস এতটা সুন্দরভাবে হয়ে যাবে, প্রেজেন্ট করবে, গ্লেসটা দিবে এবং চকচকে একটা ভাব চলে আসবে এই গ্লেসটা। তো সেটি নিয়ে আজকের ভিডিও বা ব্লগ। তো আপনাদেরকে একটু পরে আমি হচ্ছে সেই আলমারির ভিডিওটি দেখাবো এবং আপনাদেরকে কিছু কথা বলবো। এখন ওই ভিডিওটি আপনাদের সামনে আমি দেখাচ্ছি। এই দেখুন ভাইটি কীভাবে স্প্রে করতেছে, স্প্রে করতেছে এবং হচ্ছে আপনার আলমারিটি গ্লেস অলরেডি দেওয়া শুরু করে দিচ্ছে। এই আলমারিটি কিন্তু হচ্ছে রেডি, আপনার হচ্ছে রং বার্নিশ অল কমপ্লিট মোটামুটি। এখন হচ্ছে এই যে চারিপাশ এবং হচ্ছে ফ্রন্ট সাইড বা সামনের সাইড, এটা হচ্ছে এখন স্প্রে করে আপনার গ্লেসটা নিয়ে আসবে। এই স্প্রের মাধ্যমেই আপনার হচ্ছে গ্লেসটা চলে আসে। দেখুন স্প্রে করতেছেন, এটি হচ্ছে আপনি খালি চোখে হয়তো দেখতে পারতেছেন না, আর কেমিক্যাল স্প্রের কারণে দূর থেকে ভিডিওটা করতে হচ্ছে। এইটি হচ্ছে স্প্রে যদি আপনার নিঃশ্বাসে যায় তাহলে সমস্যা হতে পারে, সেই কারণে দূর থেকে একটু ভিডিওটা করা হয়েছে সেফটি পারপাসে। আর দেখতে পাচ্ছেন আপনি যদি হালকা খেয়াল করেন যে একটু ভিজে ভেজে ভাব চলে আসতেছে এবং গ্লেজ দিতেছে, কিছুটা আয়নার মতো রিফ্লেকশন দিতেছে এই যে আবরণটা দেওয়ার পর। এই আবরণটা দেওয়ার কারণে আপনার এই যে আলমারিটা বা যে কোনো জিনিস কাঠের এতটা সুন্দরভাবে চলে আসে, দৃষ্টি দৃষ্টিনন্দন চোখ হয়ে যায় যে আপনি দেখলেই আপনার ভালো লাগবে। এটাই হচ্ছে সিক্রেট একটা উপায় যে আপনি হচ্ছে বার্নিশ করেন বা এই আবরণটা দেন বার্নিশ করার পর, তাহলে সুন্দর লাগবে আপনার সরঞ্জামগুলো দেখতে আরও উজ্জ্বল এবং দৃষ্টিনন্দন হয়ে উঠবে। তো এইভাবেই হচ্ছে আপনি স্প্রেগুলো করতেছিলাম। তো আমাদের আলমারি ভিডিওটি শেষ হয়ে গেছে। এখন আমরা হচ্ছে আমাদের এখানে স্পেশাল একটা দুধের চা আছে, সেই স্পেশাল দুধ যে চা হয় সেখানে আমরা যাব এবং কাকার সেই স্পেশাল দুধের চার ভিডিওগুলো আপনাদেরকে এখন হচ্ছে দেখাবো। স্পেশাল দুধ চাটা এতটাই স্বাদ এবং সুস্বাদু যে আপনার খেতেই মন চাবে। এবং আমি একটি পাউরুটিও নিব, হচ্ছে আপনার পাউরুটিটা পোড়াবে একটু গরম দিয়ে, তারপর হচ্ছে ভিজে খাবো। এই ভিডিওটা অবশ্যই দেখবেন। হচ্ছে আমাদের পাম্পের স্পেশাল কাকার যে চা, দুধ চা, সেটা কীভাবে বানায় সেটাই হচ্ছে দেখব। দেখুন, প্রথমে হচ্ছে দুধটা জাল দেয়, জাল দিয়ে হচ্ছে শুকনো শুকনো ভাব করে নিয়ে আসে, তারপর হচ্ছে যে চারপাতি দিয়ে চাটা দেয়। এখন কমপ্লিট। ওইখান থেকে ডালেন, তারপরে এরকম অর্ধেক অর্ধেক করে এই পাত্রে কমপ্লিট করেন, আর ওটা জ্বলতে থাকে।